Hello, welcome to Business Communications. I'm based out of Western Iowa Tech in Sioux City. My name is Steele Welcher. I've been teaching this course for a while. I also teach business law sections 1 and 2. I've taught some other courses too. I want to welcome you to this course. What we're going to be looking at for the most part as an online section is asynchronous, self-paced learning, but I'm here to assist and to guide and of course to provide feedback to you. So to begin with, we are using Canvas and we are using Cengage as the publisher of our text. I believe the author's Guffrey, and the syllabus says 11th edition, but you're using MindTap and Cengage, so it's going to use the most recent edition, which is edition number 12. Just a note with Cengage, especially for those of you who are Western Iowa Tech Community College students, this is either free or included in the price that you pay, depending on how you look at it. But it is essential that when you log in to both Canvas and when you log into Cengage to access their materials, their textbook, and their assignments. Those assignments are called MindTap. It's essential that you're using your Western Iowa Tech email address and that you have it correct. If you don't do that, if you use your preferred email address, what's probably going to happen, especially at the beginning of the semester, is that you'll have access to everything and you'll think it's working okay, but then 2 or 3 weeks in, it's going to shut it down and tell you that it was basically a free trial version and that now you need to pay. So we don't want that to happen to you. It just adds complication. So I would just ask that you use your MyWit student address, email address, to access those materials, and then you should be good to go for the duration of the semester then. So this class is looking at communication. If you look at the syllabus, it's looking at written communication with a special emphasis on written communication. But you'll see throughout the course that it's all types of communication. And because of that, there's going to be an emphasis on video assignments. That basically, especially as an online class, I don't have a good way of knowing whether you're actually writing certain documents or whether you're using some kind of artificial assistance. And it's true that those may be acceptable in the future or that you'll be using those tools in the future, but you still need to be able to evaluate whether what the AI is writing or what you're writing is good enough, and how the audiences that those communications reach, how they're going to react to it. And so you need to have a baseline there of whether what's being sent out is garbage in versus garbage out, or something that's an example of effective communication. So because of that, there are writing assignments. And you'll of course have to learn how to write, and especially at the beginning of the course there's going to be a special emphasis on grammar and mechanics. And I will probably, as your instructor, provide instruction and feedback based not only on the content of whether the message that you're delivering is effective and professional under the circumstances, but also whether the grammar's there. And that's not to make anybody feel bad. I know a lot of very intelligent people who don't use the right word in the right context, and I don't either, not all the time anyways. And of course, an effective message means you may need to use the correct language in the right, for the right audience. So you may not want to sound like some kind of hoity-toity English gentleman when you're in a certain location where folks don't speak that way. So that's not going to be an example of effective communication. But for the most part, what we're dealing with is business communication. So we're looking at what would be professional, educated English. So we want to be warm, and we want to be open with people, and we want to be seemingly friendly, but we also need to remember that we're speaking in a professional context. So what does that mean? It means that using the correct word, sometimes staying away from slang, at least if the vernacular isn't widely known or if your audience isn't going to understand it. So we're talking about using proper grammar, proper mechanics, speaking clearly, and all those things are going to make a big difference in how you're viewed, both by the external customer or your clients and prospective business partners, but also within your organization, or if you're fortunate enough to take on the challenge of being an entrepreneur, within your own organization, your employees and subordinates. And unfortunately, we know that even though there are very intelligent people that may not speak in the best way, in the best context, that ultimately they are being judged and assessed based on how they sound and based on how their appearances are, even if it's not accurate, and even if the other person, the other audience members would really benefit if they gave that individual or you a chance. Also, unfortunately, outside of this class, you may not receive that feedback because we want to be polite, or impolite people are just gossiping behind your back. And then that's adversely, negatively affecting you and your advancement in your career. And you may never get the feedback that says why that reason is. That's the way the world works, unfortunately. Also, with your communications, it's not only, as we'll see in this class and in the readings, it's not only your intended audience, but also your unintended audience. So within a communication that gets sent out, somebody may forward that communication, it may go viral, it may be recorded without your knowledge, and your superiors may see it, or the message may be shared to others. Human resources may view or have access to your documents. And unfortunately, in our litigious society, we need to be writing messages in anticipation of a lawsuit. So lawyers may view what you write and find liability in what you write, or negligence. And your message, whether it's video or written, could end up in a court record as part of testimony or as part of a deposition or transcript. And the old rule of thumb, even though we don't really have newspapers as much as we used to, is that anything that you do in life or in business, would you be comfortable with those actions being on the front page of your local newspaper so that your neighbors and friends view it? Chances are, not all the time. But think about what you say and how you say it as if it were going to be placed on a newspaper and everybody you know would know about it. So with all of that in mind, there's going to be an emphasis on some video assignments, just because it's not just how you write and the information that you receive, it's how you're conveying it. So I would also just have you keep that in mind, that it's expected that you're going to be releasing these video feedback, giving your rationale for how you would approach different scenarios and different circumstances. And it is a video assignment, so you do need to have the camera on. And look, I'm not expecting that you have the best environment all the time. I realize you may have kids, or there may be a dog barking in the background, or like today, I like to be outside, but I'm next to a highway today, so there's probably some road noise that you're hearing. Hopefully the message is clear enough to understand, but maybe there's some background noise. That's okay. It doesn't have to be by any means a professional production, but what I am looking at is your demeanor, how you're making eye contact, whether you've rehearsed your message or whether I can clearly see that you're reading some kind of transcript on the screen and you're just reading it to me. Then there's going to be points deducted to that. We all start, hopefully, by reading something, whether it's ours or somebody else's information, and hopefully you're making an outline and you have a rough idea of what you're going to say. Doesn't mean you have to have perfect rehearsal or a script, but that you are knowledgeable enough about the content in which you're speaking, that you can speak intelligently about it, even if it's somewhat contemporaneous in nature. Also, with these video assignments, please keep in mind that there is a time duration. And so if it says that it's looking for 5 minutes, of course I'm not asking for you to speak slowly to make that 5-minute mark, but if it's a 5-minute video and you spoke for a minute or 30 seconds, you're not going to get full credit on that. So that's part of the challenge, is you need to not only say what you need to say, but you need to speak about it for long enough and in depth for that recommended duration. You will still get credit for an assignment that's short. I don't know if I would deduct points if you go, twice as long as you should and you're rambling, in other words, but you need to keep in mind that there's a time recommendation. And if you fall outside of that metric, then you're not really meeting the requirements of the assignment, and that's not a perfect 100% A+ assignment then. Also, with Cengage, I would really ask that you take a look at the modules section, because that's going to be your roadmap so far as what we're covering during what period of time and when things are due and what you need to do. You can find a lot of that in Cengage and in MindTap as opposed to Canvas, but the most accurate depiction of what you need to do and when you need to do it, when things are due, in other words, is going to be in your Canvas module section. When you get to MindTap, you should pay special attention, if you're just going through the book and the assignments, for items that have an orange dot that say that it's for credit or 4 points, versus everything else that's going to say practice underneath. And I say that as a caveat because it should have an orange dot, should say that it's worth credit, and there should be a due date in that Cengage MindTap area. And if it's not, yes, it may be available, yes, it may be practice, and it's good for you to do those things, absolutely, but there's not going to be points associated with that. And as I say that to you, I do also want you to know that there's going to be an assignment that pops up fairly frequently that is actually titled Practice Quiz, and unfortunately that's confusing because that will be for credit, there will be points, and it's going to have a due date. So practice quizzes, if it's part of your module assignment for that duration of weeks, you need to do that for credit. And certainly video assignments you'll need to do. There's also going to be just some regular assignments in the mix, writing assignments, and a brief exercise that's called Learn It. So learn it. But you won't have to do all those things every week. So to begin with your first week, I want to make sure that you're able to access everything and that it all makes sense. So you'll have a video introduction that you'll need to do. We start classes on a Tuesday, and those assignments will be due on Friday for the first week. Then the second week, you're going to have an assignment for Chapter 2 that's due on Wednesday. From that point forward, what I'm trying to do is have those assignments due on Wednesdays by the end of the day, so 11:59 p.m. And we're going to group, I'm going to try this, to group 2 chapters that will be due 2 weeks out on a Wednesday. So you won't have assignments due every week, but of course my worry as an instructor is that students are going to put that off until the last couple hours of the due date. And then you'll find yourself not with just 1 week's worth of homework, but 2 weeks worth of homework. Don't do that to yourself. You're an adult. You know when you have time in your week or within your 2-week duration. And so I'm giving you the latitude to work ahead to some extent. I don't want you to do everything in the first week in a marathon, because maybe I'm going to have to give you some feedback that you need to use in your future assignments. But also, you know your schedule best. You know when the family reunion is. You know if there's a holiday coming up that's going to interfere with visiting family or your work schedule. And so there's a 2-week chunk of time that is up to you to choose when you're going to submit this work. From a practical standpoint, I simply cannot grade everything in December, so there is going to be a penalty if you submit work late. It's going to be at least a 20% penalty. But if you have medical issues or exigent circumstances, then it's incumbent upon you to communicate those to me or to work with our disability services coordinator, whose name is Michelle Fiechner, to get those medical or otherwise academic accommodations to me. What else do we have to work on here for today? We discussed email, we discussed when assignments are going to be due, we discussed expectations concerning video assignments and what's a practice assignment and what isn't. And I think that's going to cover most of what I want to convey to you. Throughout the semester, there may be some more video updates from me, just briefly talking about the chapter content, but it is up to you to read everything. And certainly if you have questions about a concept or an assignment, I encourage you to reach out to me. Email generally is the best way to do that, but we do have Zoom, and we could set up a video call if there's a need for a meeting, basically, or something that short email will not suffice to answer. So I'll be there for that. And I will check my emails periodically, at least every day, and try to get back to you in a timely manner. And the same goes for grading feedback. I need to get those to you. But if you ever have any specific questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Really do look forward to working with you guys, and I hope you get something valuable out of this. That reminds me, anytime you write an email to me or anybody else, something I see pretty frequently is there's no subject line in the message. So there is a field for a subject line. You should put a subject in your email, and if you're messaging on that same topic, then you should reply to that message. That makes it so much easier for us to review after the fact. This is what we talked about, this is when we talked about it, and this is kind of the resolution that we had on that message. And then otherwise, it saves time in searching and keeps everything better organized. So encourage you to do that. Certainly as an assignment, that's the format of your email or your memo that you're sending out, and we expect you to adopt those practices going forward, because certainly college is practice for your professional life. I also acknowledge that some of you are from different walks of life. You could be my age, you could be older, you could have years of work experience, and definitely want you to draw upon those years of experience. Many of those video assignments will indeed ask you to draw upon your personal experiences. If you have that work experience, you have a leg up on everybody else. And if you don't, if you're a student who's just been in high school and you need to think about family dynamics, maybe a extracurricular event or a sport, and you probably have been working too, to some extent. So you just have to be more creative about where you draw upon those experiences. Anyways, I won't keep you any longer. I encourage you to try to access MindTap and get used to the interface. And you will have some assignments due, including a video assignment giving an introduction to me, so I can better be acquainted with you and understand how to pronounce your name at least. So thank you very much.